Good evening, everyone. My name is Victoria Kangada, and I will be the moderator for today's session of Voices Unheard, where we are having this very important discussion of the hidden crisis in African prison. Thank you so much for joining us and for our speakers for gracing us with their time. And I will be passing on over to Chiamaka, who will tell us a little bit more about Voices Unheard and the discussion that we are about to have today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Victoria. Good day, everybody. Good day, ladies and gentlemen.
I think we lost Chiamaka there for a minute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can get you.
Okay. So sorry. I think it must be network reception. Um, I was talking about why we're
I think Chiamaka is having some challenges with the network. I'll take it on from her. So, thank you so much once again for joining us for Voices Unheard. This is a conversation that is very important towards understanding the reality of conflict resolution and how we treat conflict in our societies across Africa's. Today here we have Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria represented, but I believe that even in the audience we do have like other countries, but no worries, we will chime in as necessary to have the conversation touch on all aspects of Africa. We're so glad to have this conversation today, which is supported by UPAD, by Bright, Basics Right Watch, and Actions for People, Architecture Rights and Territory. Those are our partners for our webinar today, and we're so glad to have them on board as we have this very important discussion. For myself, I am Victoria Kangeda, and I'm the founder of a company called Instruct Africa, where we're building digital tools to create access to justice across Africa so that we can be able to empower communities both economically and in their social lives. I do believe that having access to legal tools is one of the key stepping stones towards realizing a very a just society and one that actually helps people develop. So, with that said, I would like to give it to Chiamaka to introduce herself and as the convener of this very important discussion. And then from there, we can have our first speaker give us their presentation. Over to you, Chiamaka.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I was trying to give a brief rundown of some of the challenges that
We are really sorry about that, Chiamaka. So I will go on ahead and introduce our first speaker of the day, who is Tracy Frimpong, who is a passionate Ghanaian lawyer with a deep commitment to human rights and criminal justice reform. Her journey into reformative justice was ignited after witnessing the conviction of an 18-year-old girl, which led to her founding the Reduced Recidivism Ghana Initiative, an innovative vocational skill training program aimed at empowering young offenders with practical skills to facilitate their reintegration into society post incarceration. Thank you so much, Tracy, for joining us today for this very important conversation. And we will be very happy to hear from you on your views around the hidden crisis in African prisons. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So today I will be taking the session on Ghana's blueprints, for rehabilitation. What Ghana has been able to do, shifting the focus of punishment from retribution to rehabilitation. So before we we begin or we go into whatever we are going to go into, we have to look at the three um, theories of punishment. We have utilitarianism, and we have retribution, we have restoration. So retribution is is that the offender must pay for the punishment or for the crime, or must be punished for the crime that they caused to the society. And then restoration, how do we restore, this person who is the victim of the crime? How does the offender, compensate that person? And then utilitarianism has to do with the fact that justice should deter and promote public safety. So it means that the punishment that is given to an offender should be able to deter others. So we are looking at the shift, you know, of punishment. When we look at the reason behind the reason why people are punished, or the reason behind punishment, to deter people. But now there is a major shift from, retribution to restorative justice. We want to look at how we can compensate the victim, because in criminal cases, when you say somebody has offended you, you take the person to court and the person is sentenced, the victim does not get anything in return, then it means that the reason why you went to court was to sentence the person. If the person stole your money, you are not getting anything in return. If they did something to you, you are not getting compensated, because you know that in criminal cases, it is the state against the offender, but not the victim against the offender. So once you take the person to court, you are getting nothing. But now we want to look at how victims can also gain? How can victims be compensated? So that's what we term as the retributive punishment. So now Ghana is now focusing on restorative justice and how we can rehabilitate offenders, because we realize that people are sentenced, they go to jail, and they come out worse. And the issue with, the cause of this is because there are no the prison facilities are not enough to be able to house everybody. So we have somebody who is guilty of murder, and then we have somebody who just stole, let's say, plantain or goats. I don't know whether in your jurisdiction that is very prevalent. You have somebody stealing somebody's goats or somebody's plantain, and they are sentenced. People get as high as 5 years for stealing a goat or for stealing plantain. Yes. So you have somebody committing murder, you have somebody who is involved in drugs, and then this person who stole plantain is mixed up with this person together in prison company. They will definitely get corrupted, and there's a high tendency they are going to come out worse than they entered. So now we are shifting from retribution to rehabilitation and restorative because of the effects of just putting the person in prison without making an effort to transform that person's life, because they will go and then they will come out worse and they will cause, greater harm to the society. So we have to understand what rehabilitation is. We have to understand what rehabilitation is. Rehabilitation goes just beyond confining the person or detaining the person. We are looking at how to reform the person's behavior, the person's values. How do we ensure that this person becomes a better person? Equipping the offender with skills that they can use after their release. Because we know that once you sentence somebody and then they go to jail, you expect them, if their sentence is 5 years or 10 years, you expect them to be in jail for 10. After some, they will definitely come out. When they come out, what provisions are being made for them? Are they coming back to be a nuisance? And then we find out that most, offenders who are sentenced, when they come out, they end up going to crime because society does not accept them. Their families, may stigmatize against them because they have been convicted. When it comes to employment opportunities, they may be discriminated against because nobody wants to hire an ex-convict, for integrity and then honesty reasons. Because if you are going for a job and then you are an ex-convict, it raises eyebrows. Nobody wants to associate with such a person. So it becomes difficult for offenders to reintegrate into society once they come out. So rehabilitation deals with the fact that we are going to reform them. We are going to equip them with skills that when they come out, they can be able to contribute to society. So they come out improved rather than worse because of, the company of criminals they find themselves in when they go to prison. So the challenge that offenders face while being reintegrated is the stigmatization, discrimination, the inability to secure, jobs. And that is the main reason why offenders go back to crime. That is what we call recidivism. The tendency of an ex-convict to go back into criminal company or to be that become come out reformed, but because they do not get the acceptance, they do not get the opportunities, there are no job opportunities, no housing. Because after serving about 10 years in jail, when you come out, where are you going to? Your family would have probably moved from where they are. There's no room for you. Children would have been born. Rooms are occupied. Already, when we look at our current economy, our various economies in Africa, we can attest to the fact that employment is a main challenge. Even for graduates, it is, a challenge for people to find jobs after school. So imagine a criminal with, little education and you're an ex-convict, how are you going to secure a job? So because you are not able to secure a job to feed yourself, you find that this person will go back to their crimes. If it is stealing, it is robbery, you find that they go back to be able to earn a living. Then they find themselves back in prison. So we are looking at how to reduce, the rate at which people commit crimes, because as we know, prisons are overcrowded. I cannot even, explain the rate at which our prisons are overcrowded. Everywhere in the world, everywhere in Africa, we face this issue of overcrowding. How can we reduce overcrowding? We cannot just say that we want to reduce overcrowding, so we are releasing prisoners. No, we cannot just release them. But we find that every day people commit crimes. Every day people are sent to court. Every day people are sentenced for crimes that they have committed or for crimes they haven't committed. And so there is little we can do unless the government, decides to build more prison facilities. But what we can do to curb this overcrowding issue is to ensure that the rate at which people reoffend is reduced. Because when they come out, they are not accepted no job. They will commit crimes and go back to prison. Adding up, to the numbers that are there, because when one person is released, we're like, oh, at least we have some space. But they go back, reoffend, and they come back. So it becomes like a never-ending cycle where we cannot really deal with the issue of overcrowding, because people go out and they reoffend and they come back. So how can we deal with the issue of recidivism in a bid to, control or reduce overcrowding in prisons? By offering practical skill training, providing support or aftercare post-release. So once the person is in prison, what measures are we taking to ensure that, this person is able to make a living once they come out? So equipping them with skills that they can monetize once they come out. So for reduce recidivism, the NGO that I founded, we offer vocational skill training in prisons and correctional centers. We're currently in the Junior Girls Correctional Center in Accra. So we offer training in soap making, we do bead making, we do braiding, we do shoe making. Yes, we do bleach, we make softness. We teach these young offenders how to make these things, because these skills are skills that can be used to set up small businesses. You don't really need to go and seek employment. Once you have small capital, you can start, by yourself. So we help them to reintegrate into society by helping them to set up, small businesses after their release. So just yesterday, we had one of our young offenders who completed her sentence, and she learned how to braid. So we got her some hair tools, yes, and items that she can start, a small braiding business with. We do not give them the cash because, as you would guess, when you give them the money, there's a high tendency of them, spending or squandering the money and not really using it for what it is meant. So we buy the items based on the skills that you learn. So we had another offender who learned bead making, so she can make bags with beads, she can make slippers with beads, and then we gave her a starter pack. Yes, and we were happy because when she was released, exactly a week later, she sent us a video of what she has been able to do, with the bead. She made a bag out of it. She's going to sell it. We invest that money into the business, and she's now enrolled in a vocational training school after, serving her sentence. So that is what we do. So to curb overcrowding, there was a program called the Justice for All program that aimed to, reduce overcrowding in Ghanaian prisons by setting up mobile, courts longer time in remand than their actual sentences. So you would have somebody who would have committed a crime, and let's say the punishment for the crime is 5 years, but we have people who have stayed, on remand for over 10 years because maybe the judge was transferred, we cannot find their files, something is missing, some documents are missing, his lawyer is dead, he has no lawyer. So because of that, you find out that people can stay on remand for a very long time. So this Justice for All program was targeted at remand prisoners so that they can expedite, their trials for them. So this was done in collaboration with the Judicial Service of Ghana, Attorney General Department, Ghana Prisons, SHRAJ, Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and then the POS Foundation. So we are looking at the impacts of this program, setting up mobile court sessions in prisons. How has the impacts been? How has it been able to reduce overcrowding? So in 2007, the percentage, of remand prisoners out of the total prison population was 33%. So if you went to prison in 2007, you find that if there were 100 prisoners, 33 of them were remand prisoners. So through this program of, online court sessions to expedite, court trials, criminal trials, this overcrowding or the number of remand prisoners in prison reduced from 33% to 13.4 in 2019. And as of March last year, the percentage was 8.06%. So you could see that they criticized it and said that the fact that it was targeted at remand prisoners alone was kind of discriminatory, meaning that the name Justice for All was not actually justice for all, but justice for some. So now this program is looking at setting up mobile prisons for all, prisoners, whether remand or being convicted. Those who had wrongful convictions, malicious prosecutions, this, program is going to cater for them, and those who may also want to, appeal their cases. Yes. So even in, COVID, during the COVID crisis, this program was still ongoing. So it wasn't only in our major. We have a very big prison in Salmon where majority of offenders are taken to, but then apart from that, it was also held in other prisons like Akuse, Kumasi, Koforidua. It spread to other prisons, ensuring that people can access justice. Because of the COVID, the lockdown, we couldn't go to courts, there were restrictions. So this ensured that even during the COVID crisis, people had access to justice. So now let's look at other alternatives to custodial sentencing. So we realize, I don't know if I know Kenya has this custodial sentencing, but for Ghana we do not have non-custodial. But in Ghana we do not have non-custodial sentence. Once you commit a crime and then you are found guilty, you are going straight to prison. Once you plead guilty or you are proven guilty. So there has been, people who have been advocating for. Hello, am I being heard? Am I being heard?
Yes, we can hear you, Tracy.
Okay, okay. So where we can, release the offender, and then they being supervised in, the community. You have there's a lot of advocacy to, shift from the custodial punishment to non-custodial. Yes, so there is a proposal to establish, a regional criminal justice system network within ECOWAS, where, stakeholders across West Africa be connected and share experiences and model justice for all program, and then facilitate policy harmonization and reform. So in conclusion, Ghana is on a journey from retribution to restoration. We are not there yet. We are learning from other countries like Kenya has laid for us to be hello. Can you hear me? Okay. So
I
this
think we have a
effort,
network from our speaker.
yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Apologies for that.
Hello, can you hear me now? Okay, let me conclude. So this program has laid a foundation, and then we are on a journey to reducing recidivism and then reducing overcrowding in prisons. Thank you.
Conversation there. We're so glad to have you here, and for the good for the great explanation of the reality of access to justice in Ghana and how we can help reduce recidivism across the justice system. We do have some questions from the audience, which I will share here. So, what do you think of considering the current prison capacity in Africa? Is it then possible to separate minor offenders from major offenders? I think that is something that I did not see in the explanation, in the presentation. How does Ghana approach the whole issue of minors in the justice system? Are they given any special treatment, or is there a way to manage the sensitivity of
Yes.
having a minor
So in Ghana,
offender?
yes. So in Ghana, minors are treated differently from adult offenders. When a minor is arrested and they are taken to court, lawyers do not rope, the judge does not rope. The trial is held in chambers. So no other person, no other external person, just the lawyers. We have the social welfare officer or the probational officer. Except than the main prison. And then with minors, the maximum sentences are between 6 months and 3 years. You cannot sentence a minor above 3 years, even if it's for the grievous crime. So last year, last year or early this year, we had, a murder case where a 16-year-old boy killed about 2 girls in an accident. He drove, I don't know if you heard, it was all over the news. He took, his parents' car, was driving on top speed, and then killed 2 girls. He was sentenced to 3 years, although people were kind of raised about it, looking at the nature of the crime. But because he's a minor, he's below 18 years, you cannot sentence him to more than 3 years, no matter the offense. And minors are very much protected. Their faces are not shown, when it comes to the news. You can't show their faces, so they are very much protected when it comes to trials of minors or juveniles. Thank you.
Maybe because we are discussing prisons, how does the sentencing and the conditions, do they actually go to like the maximum prisons, or is there like a juvenile prison specifically for them? And how are they taken care of during their sentences? Because yes, go ahead.
Yeah, maximum security prison. They have junior correctional centers for minors. So there's a junior correctional center, there's a senior correctional center based on the age. Yeah, so with the senior correctional center, you can have people between 17 to 21, because if somebody is 17 and they're sentenced to years, they are not mixed up with adults. Yeah. Thank you.
So I think we have some more questions. So Victoria, can you read out the questions for her quickly? Let me read out the questions then. We have 2 questions. The first one here is would you say that stigmatization is the leading factor for recidivism or lack of skills/habilitation for the ex-convict, as without rehabilitation they can be reoffending? Hello, Tracy. Did you get my question?
Hello.
Okay, so I think the network is breaking at her on her end. So we can go to the next speaker. Then when we're done, we can go to other questions.
When you read this, condition is the leading factor for
We can hear you.
Tracy? I think we lost Tracy for a bit. Chiamaka, would you like to chime in on the private-owned prisons?
Okay, let me take some questions. So I see something about what do you think the use of private-owned prisons, as seen in some jurisdictions, a means of reducing overcrowding in prison facilities? I think it can be very dangerous because it turns justice to a business, and justice should not be a business because once profit is involved, you see people become very careless with it, and we see like let me use the US, which is very which I know for certain does private prisons. You see that it often leads to um justice being a business because you're being paid for the amount of people you bring in. So you push people, even people that you should look for alternative other than punishment. You should look at rehabilitation, restitution, and other factors. And you find that in the end, justice will not be done. Instead, you find abuse and then it turns to a business. So I personally believe that people should not look at private prisons. The government should not look at any point privatizing justice. Justice should always be at the hands of governments. Um, so I want to
Yeah.
hand over to Tracy to answer our last question.
Tracy, what are your thoughts on private prisons?
No, I don't think it's not a prisons. The justice system cannot be a profit-making venture. And so once you make access to justice, or you put justice in the area of profit making, private institutions always are looking to make profits, then we are going to find that people will be put in prison for crimes that they have not committed, or for crimes that can when you that when you go through the full trial, they will come out as not guilty. So I don't think privatizing, no, it's like privatizing the judiciary, because the prison system is connected to the judiciary. Then we cannot privatize the executive, we cannot privatize the legislature. So I think these are things that should be left to the state, because once you commit a crime, you've committed the crime against the state, not against the private entity. Although you may have committed a crime against somebody, the first for offending them. Yes, so yeah, thank you. I'm done with my submission.
Thank you so much, Tracy. That was very informative. And just to add a little bit, I think with the methods and the things that you have brought up around how to rehabilitate, different methods in which we can apply to help reduce recidivism. I would like to, comment and be like, I think the question still lies on the beginning of the process. The question should be like, why did the crime actually happen? So that we can actually avoid the long journey towards prison, because we can definitely see that prison is not exactly a solution that is giving us restorative justice, which is something that every human being is seeking for. So I think when the courts or the institutions that come across these offenders, I think the question to restore them is to ask them, why did this happen in the first place? Let's analyze the environments they're in, the realities they're in. Because if you find somebody who stole plantain because they were hungry, then jail is not an answer, definitely. So I think that is something that we need to think about and go back to the drawing board so that we can have an easier time in the pipeline of realizing access to justice. But thank you so much, Tracy, for the amazing presentation. We are very happy to have had you here. Thank you so much. And now we'll go on to our second speaker of the day, who is Wiyusia Audrey from Kenya. She's going to be taking us through the reality of voices unheard in Kenya. And yes, and we're going to hear the Kenyan perspective and see whether there's a better way. They're doing things better than Ghana. Welcome, Audrey.
Thank you, Victoria. for this opportunity. So I will be looking at the advocacy wings or what the Kenyan courts are doing to ensure prison justice. As Tracy has stated here, the judiciary as an arm of government is tasked with interpreting the law. And in the criminal justice system, the judiciary is involved with the trial of the accused person, and the end goal is to find whether or not these people are guilty as charged. So I will be looking at the measures that Kenya has in place during the trial process, focusing at the sentencing stage to ensure that the rights of offenders are protected even post conviction, that is beyond bail, and the best practices that we have as a country in ensuring prison or criminal justice, as well as the welfare of prisoners and some of the challenges that we have as a country. So the guiding point for Kenya is our constitution, which has set the standard for treatment of persons in conflict with the law. And some of the articles that are instructive in our Bill of Rights are the provisions on the rights of an arrested person, rights of an accused person, rights of a convicted or a detained person, the right to fair trial, as well as other rights such as protection from inhumane and degrading treatment and human dignity. So these articles guide the court during the trial process on how to handle accused persons. And when it comes to the sentencing stage, that is the point when a guilty verdict has been made that the accused person actually committed the offense. So the court is supposed to determine the appropriate penal sanction for the accused person. And in doing so, the court usually takes into consideration various factors, and we start with the objectives of sentencing. So the court doesn't just make out a sentence. Yeah? Some of the objectives of sentencing will be retribution, which is the old way, but currently we are shifting from retribution to rehabilitation as well as restoration. Also take into consideration the principles where the court will be looking at aspects such as protection of human rights, the proportionality of the sentence to be given to the offense that has been committed, as well as uniformity. So all these factors that we are will guide the court for whether and the court what that are allowed. And just to mention but a few, we have compensation, which is recognized. We have restitution, we have forfeiture, and the most common one is imprisonment, whereby you'll find that the statute that
Hello,
makes
Audrey.
the
Sorry, we can't hear you very well. Can you speak up a bit or get closer to the mic, please?
Can you hear me now?
It's a bit better, but if you can speak up a bit more.
Okay. For imprisonment, you'll find that most statutes prescribe an imprisonment term for a particular offense. Yeah. So, for example, if it's an offense of robbery, you'll find that the section provides that 14 years or 7 years as the term the person should serve. Then you'll find some statutes prescribe a mandatory minimum sentence. For example, the sexual offenses for defilement, we have a mandatory minimum term, which has since been challenged. The constitutionality of the same has been challenged in the High Court. I believe that case is at the Court of Appeal. It was appealed. Then the other sanction we have is the death penalty. We still have the death penalty in our laws, and for offences such as murder, treason, forcing to commit a felony, robbery with violence, the penalty is a death penalty. However, when it comes to murder, the death penalty is mandatory, but that has since been declared unconstitutional in the Murwatete case. However, for the other offences, the court can still give the death sentence, as well as for murder cases, but it is not so much. Because the argument is, why is the legislature telling the judiciary what to do? And we should have separation of powers between the two arms of government. Additionally, why should we have the right to fair trial? And why should we allow the accused person to mitigate during sentencing, to give their story why the offense was committed and whatnot, when at the end of the day, we will still give them that death penalty. So that is the argument. So in Kenya, you'll find that there are categories of offenders who are given special or further consideration during sentencing. These categories include minors and pregnant offenders. And when it comes to these categories, the issue at hand is the best interest of the child principle. In that, when the court is determining the appropriate sentence, it should uh, ensure that the decision that shall be made shall take into consideration the welfare and the well-being of the child. Yeah, and on that note, that is why you find that pregnant offenders and children cannot be given a death sentence. And when it comes to children, custodial sentence as usually or detention is usually the last measure of resort. In that the detention of a minor should not go beyond 24 hours without the permission of court. And if these minors are to be detained, then the
Audrey, I think we lost your audio again. Could you please adjust it? Not yet.
Victoria,
Yes. Now I think now we can hear you.
okay. Sorry, someone was calling me. I'm using my phone. Sorry. Um, so they cannot be detained beyond the 24 hours without the leave of court. The other category of offenders is persons with disabilities.
Audrey?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, there's someone who is really calling me. I don't know what is wrong. So when we come to persons with disabilities, elderly persons, and age offenders, uh, the consideration here is their right to human dignity as well as protection from inhumane treatment. So where the court is of the opinion that giving a custodial sentence to such category of offenders will violate their right to from inhuman treatment, then a non-custodial sentence will be given. The other category we have is intersex persons, and it is noteworthy that Kenya actually recognizes intersex as the third gender. After the 2019 census, we found that we have around 1,150 something intersex people. And that is what informed the recognition of intersex as a type of gender. So these people, during sentencing, the main consideration is separate confinement from the normal binary men and female offenders. Then we have mentally incapacitated persons. So these people usually, there are people who are not fit to stand trial, and when the judge or the magistrate forms the opinion that after, of course, medical examination, that a person cannot stand trial, then the report is usually submitted to the Cabinet Secretary for Health, who submits it to the President to recommend what should be done. And under the law, the President can recommend that they be detained in a mental health institution. This position has since been challenged in court in the case of Isaac Timaru versus Republic as unconstitutional because we are still seeing the interference of the executive in what the judiciary is doing. And the other arguments for against that is because yeah, people think that or view the mentally incapacitated persons as people who need medical attention, and prison is not the place for them to be. So those are the categories of offenders who are given special or further consideration during trial. The other thing that happens in Kenya is involvement of other actors in the trial process or the sentencing process. So it's not a reserve of the court during sentencing. You will find that the defense and the prosecution, as well as the victim, will make their submission, which will be considered by the court in determining the appropriate sentence, whether they will be given an uncustodial sentence or a custodial sentence, or even the death penalty that we have talked about. So the accused person will give their mitigating factors, such as maybe they were acting in self-defense, they are victims of gender-based violence, and the prosecution will, or the victim maybe will give their victim impact assessment, and the prosecution will give the maybe aggravating factors to support their the sentence that they think is fit. The other actors are the children officers and the probation and aftercare services who interview the offender, and after interviewing the offender, they prepare a report, and that report they include recommendations which are usually considered by the court, and of course they are not binding to the court. The court can depart from the recommendations and give reasons as to why they are not agreeing with the recommendation. The other The other aspect, the other part I look at is best practices in Kenya's criminal justice system. And the first is promotion of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. So the complainant and the accused can, with the involvement of the prosecution, decide to settle their dispute out of court. But of course, there are categories of offenses that can't be submitted to ADR. When we talk about defilement, especially offenses under the Sexual Offences Act, and these settling these matters out of court and resulting the same to non-prosecution of offenders has been declared unconstitutional in Kenya, and that is in the case of IW and another versus IW and another versus Omondi. And I think in this case, the police were trying to settle the case out of court. The other practice is diversion, whereby an offender or a representative of the offender or a child can make an application to the Director of Public Prosecution that the case be settled out of court. It is more of ADR also. So they can make an application that the matter be settled out of court. And of course, there are public interest cases that cannot be diverted from the court process. We also have presidential amnesties whereby the president pardons offenders under Article 133 of our Constitution. And these can be conditional, it can be postponement of punishment. We have seen, I think recently around 50 people were pardoned. And there was so much outrage because among the people who were pardoned, there was an offender, a person who had committed defilement, and the civil society was out, guns blazing, why such a person had been released while there were other more deserving petty offenders. Then we have remission of sentences. Remission means that a sentence is reduced, and this is under Section 36 of the Kenya's Prison Act. So after you have finished 1 month in prison, your sentence can be reduced, but remission is limited under that section. Under that section, which has since been declared unconstitutional, you find that offenders for robbery with violence, those sentenced to life imprisonment, are not to benefit under remission, but the same has been declared unconstitutional. We also have plea bargaining, whereby the prosecution as well as accused persons involving the victim try to negotiate a plea agreement, and this can result in a reduction of the charge, or maybe the charge can be, can I say, replaced. For example, if it's murder, it can be amended to manslaughter and such. But offenses under the Sexual Offences Act as well as the International Crimes Act are not subject to plea bargaining. In Kenya, we also have, there is also a shift from imprisonment of, detaining certain categories of offenders in prison facilities. For example, minors.
We have Boston institutions, we have hostels, we have rehabilitation centers, and youth corrective training centers. For example, the one in Kamiti, we have Shimolatewa, whereby instead of taking these people to facilities where we have adult offenders, these children are kept separately. whereby they are corrected, and it's more of some sort of rehabilitation rather than confinement to punish. Then we also have special facilities for children accompanying their mothers to prison. In Langata recently, when I was there, a lady told me that they have daycare, in that those children between the age of 1 to 4 who accompany their mothers to prison are usually taken care there, and they meet with their mothers in the evening. We also have organizational support, and this is where the civil societies are very active in advocacy. They're very active in legal training and education, especially for people in prison. You find that once in a while they go there and they train these people. They train these people. They train these people in defending, to self-represent in court. Lastly, I will look at what we have in terms of welfare of prisoners. And it's interesting that we actually classify our prisoners, and we have stages for the prison system once they are admitted to prison. And these stages come with various privileges. Yeah, you'll find that a prisoner in a certain stage can participate in an earning income, in income generating activity. Yeah, we have prison industries, and those prison industries actually generate revenue. We also have these prisoners also. Sorry, who is calling me? They also participate in entertainment and recreational activities. Can you hear me, Victoria? Someone is calling me.
Yes. We can hear you now. At least the sound has.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Sorry. Oh, is restored. Okay. So they can participate in income generating activities. They can access education and library. And it's interesting that I have friends who are in prison, and right now they are advocates because they studied in prison. They studied law in prison. You can study, depending on the organization that is sponsoring you, you can study while still there. So that when you come out, as we talk about reintegration will be quite easy because they come out and they already have a job with the organizations they were working with while in prison as paralegals and volunteers. We also have separate confinement of men, women, children, and intersex persons. And we also have medical protocols for persons admitted in prison. So that means that the moment they are admitted, they undergo medical examination. It is important to know that in Kenya, a prisoner will retain all rights, and they will only be denied those rights that are incompatible with their detention. For example, freedom of movement. They also have the right to food, and they have a meal. Is it a meal plan or a menu under the Prisons Act? There is a schedule that provides for their menu. They also have the right to visitation, and they can be visited. And of course, the reason why I am highlighting these prison rights and welfare is because where these rights are violated, these persons, the inmates have an audience of the court. They can raise their grievance to the Commissioner General of Prisons or the officer in charge. And where it is not successful, they have an audience of the court. And how do they have that audience? Yeah, you might think maybe they cannot file those cases, but NGOs and civil societies are helping in that. Yeah. When you go to prison, they will tell you their story. They will tell you what is happening. They will tell you their complaints. And as lawyers, that is where we come in, where you indeed see that there is a violation. These people, you can file a petition for them as a representative, because Article 22 allows you to file a public interest litigation cause. To that end, I'll just highlight the challenges that we continue to face. The most common one is resource limitation, which in turn affects or increases overcongestion in our prisons, because we cannot expand our prison facilities, we cannot improve the current prison facilities, we cannot improve the welfare of the prison staff. So resource limitation is a big challenge. We also have economic barriers, especially these will affect mostly the people in remand, because in Kenya, an accused person has a right to bail, but it comes to a point where if you cannot afford bail, you will have to stay in remand. Yeah, so it's just poverty continues to prevent these people's right to access bail and bond. Then we have
Okay, thank you, Audrey. I think her network is breaking. We have a couple of questions. Personally, I have some questions. I noticed, so maybe when I noticed that there's a lot of dependence on NGOs, or NGOs are coming in, NGOs are doing that. What is the government doing? What's the government putting in place to, combat these issues? And then something else I found interesting in the conversation is in the implementation of these laws, is it really is in practice, is what is being said in the law, is it being put into practice? For example, in Nigeria, they say okay, minors should be separated from adults, but in practice, you go to these prisons in Nigeria and you find that there are no facilities for minors. So oftentimes, these minors are put in the same place as adults. So when you look at Kenya, is that the same? Is that what the law is saying? That when you go to the prisons, you're seeing something different? And what laws are in place and what laws can be put in place so that there will not be over dependence on the non-government or the development sector? So, because I see a lot of NGOs are coming in and giving them job. What is the government doing with it? What if these NGOs close down? What happens to rehabilitation for prisoners and things like that? I would really love to hear your opinion on those issues.
Okay, thank you, Priska. So I'm glad to say that in Kenya, when it comes to children, what is in the law is what is happening. Because I have been to several prison facilities. Let me use prison facilities that confine children. I have been to Committee. Committee has a section for children. There is Kirigiti, which also has a section for female children offenders. And indeed, it is not that we just have laws which are piling up dust and they are not being implemented. In Kenya, it is happening for children, because when it comes to children, they are vulnerable. And there are people whom we need to protect. So these children are usually separated. What is the government doing to ensure the welfare of these prisoners and whatnot? In Kenya, we have the National Legal Aid Service Act, which makes provisions for legal aid services. And we have the Legal Aid Fund. So you'll find that under that act, the government is supposed to facilitate legal aid, whether in prisons or outside. But the challenge we have as of now is the legal aid fund is not operational. That means we don't have funding for such initiatives. That is the situation. So there is not much that can be done by the government. As I had mentioned, resource limitation is a big challenge in Kenya. Yeah, that is it, Priska.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for that very good answer and a very elaborative presentation. I do too have a question. From the whole presentation, I've had a very huge undertone of the government being in charge of everything matters justice. I wanted to ask whether there are cultural or rather societal influences towards the justice system and how they look at prisons, and does that come into play when reforms are being made, and or does it actually like influence how things are being made? Because I come from the school of thought that the prison system in itself has colonial background and everything. So how has the government employed cultural influences to attain the said justice towards the victim and the victims of the prison system?
I haven't gotten you quite well. Kindly just summarize,
All right, all
Victoria.
right. So, as I was saying, I've felt a very huge undertone of institutions, government, NGOs, but I'm struggling to see the Kenyan in how justice is administered. Do we fully rely on government, and if not, are there like cultural influences towards the prison system that are employed so that can feel like it is fair? It's not a trickle down approach, but rather a collaborative effort to
Okay.
join that discussion with what we were discussing earlier about the restorative element of justice.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I think I get you now. So as I had mentioned earlier, Kenya recently came up with sentencing policy guidelines in 2023, and the highlight of that policy is more of a shift from the retribution aspect of sentencing to restorative justice and societal reintegration. And that is why you will find that offenders are being given an opportunity to sit down with the complainant or the victim. Yeah, because you'll find that some victims or complainants don't even want to go through the court process. Yeah. So in such a case, the society can sit down with the offender and talk, especially where the offense in question is not an offense that has been exempted from out of court settlement. So it's not about once an offense has been committed, get arrested, go through the trial process, get sentenced, go to jail. No. And I will give an example. There is a time, some time back, I think it was in 2022, a friend of mine was robbed in a matatu. And by around 3 men. So when you look at that situation, it is robbery with violence. And when she was robbed, of course, the men were caught and were taken to Central Police Station. But my friend, what she wanted was her phone and her pass. She didn't want to be going to court and whatnot. So we were there negotiating with the OCS as we want the phone, we don't want to follow up with the court, whatnot. But the OCS is telling us that, if I let these people, I will look like I'm not doing my job and whatnot and whatnot. So what I'm trying to say is there is a shift from what the systems want per se to include the views of the victim, the views of the complainant, Victoria. And yes, we got the phone, so we have never been called to court. So I think the
The issue.
offenders were released. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think that's really cool. To consider that shift is really cool, and maybe even one of the recommendations that we can have from this discussion is that maybe now the police should be empowered to, arbitrate these issues
Mm.
when they come up, because at the end of the day, we're trying to reduce the baggage that we have on our system, to reduce, the overcrowding, and just the expense that goes into a trial. Thank you so much, Audrey. That was really, really insightful, and we're so happy to have you in this very important discussion. Now we'll head on to our last speaker, Miss Dorcas Anaja. Hi, Dorcas.
Hi, Victoria. Hi, everyone. I've had a very good time listening to the speakers and wonderful presentation, Audrey and Tracy. Um,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
really been amazing. So over to you. You can begin on your side. So Tracy is our third and last speaker of the day. Uh, sorry, Dorcas is our last speaker of the day. And Dorcas is a legal and development practitioner passionate about reforms in the justice system. She currently serves as a programs associate, access to justice at Hope Behind Bars Africa, where she leverages her legal expertise, advocacy, and communication skills to promote a fairer, more reformative system for incarcerated and justice impacted individuals. Dorcas is committed to helping shape a justice system grounded in accountability and equity. With over 5 years of experience, her work advances the dignity of incarcerated persons, the discriminalization of poverty, and the protection of journalists and citizens' rights to freedom of assembly and expression. She also provides legal and reformatory support to indigent individuals behind bars, including detained protesters, ensuring their rights are upheld and their voices heard. Welcome,
Okay.
Dorcas, to the
Thank you
stage.
very much. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
for that introduction. I'm trying to upload my presentation, but I think since you have it on your end, maybe you can just go ahead.
Yes,
Awesome.
please.
Okay.
I think it's
Good day, everyone. I think so far first of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me, Chiamaka, and I'd like to thank the organizers of this for creating such a insightful events today. I've learned so much, and I would say former speakers have spoken a lot about what it has to do with the criminal justice system. So I think my role would just basically tell us, okay, what can we do, because we're all stakeholders in this um, sector and we all have a part to play. So my topic, mobilizing stakeholders for people-centered prisons reform in Nigeria. That's what I'll be doing. I'll be looking through, the Nigeria case study, what we've been able to do, how we've been able to mobilize stakeholders, and hoping that you will join us in this work. Please, can you confirm if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Dorcas. Please go ahead.
Okay, so let's go straight ahead. So, first of all, what does it mean to mobilize? The definition of mobilization has to do with organizing and encouraging a group of people to take collective action in pursuit of a particular objective. So it's just about bringing in resources, human or capital, into the use of a particular subject. Um, Next slide, please. I think I can. I'm even trying to on my end. Okay, I think. Sorry, Peter, is that you or me? I think because it's showing me that I
It's
can
me. It's me.
control my end. Okay. Okay, so
Yeah.
these are just brief examples that we have tried. Sometimes where we've tried to mobilize here in Nigeria, we have the famous Bring Back Our Girls, where a couple of young girls were kidnapped by extremists from their school. So we have Bring Back Our Girls movement, we have the NSAS protest, we have the Occupy Nigeria protest as well. So these are popular. I mean, there are various forms and times where Nigerians have mobilized for pushing for accountability and pushing for justice, but these are a few of the examples. Forgive me for rushing, but I know we're short of time, so yeah. So moving on, just this quote by Helen Keller that says, "Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. We can do so little, but together we can do so much." I think there's an error in that, but basically together we can do so much. And so one of the main reasons why we mobilize is because no single group, no matter how critical, can solve a systematic problem like what we face around prison crisis alone. So other speakers have spoken and they've used, I think when they as they were speaking, a part of me was like, are we living in the same country? I know it's all Africa, but it feels like our problems are so the same, you know. We have the issue of overcrowding, we have the issue of slow litigation, you know, and an overbonded criminal justice system. But basically, we need to mobilize, every stakeholder needs to mobilize because one stakeholder cannot do it alone, from the police to the judiciary to civil societies or even citizens. We can't, you know, like even me, no matter how passionate I am as a lawyer or as a, you know, a development worker, I can't work and try to fix everything alone because per our laws, per the structures and institutions, you need everybody to play their parts to make things work together. And I mean, what's the fun in trying to do something alone? You always need to be the person. But when you mobilize and work with people, there's just a beautiful thing about different people bringing their ideas on how things can move and bringing in their expertise. So that's one of the main reasons why we need to mobilize. Next slide. By mobilizing stakeholders and communities, we bring everyone who has a stake. And I think per the way this life is set up, I wanted to ask this question to the audience to ask if they could share exactly who they think the stakeholders who has a stake in prison reform. I don't know if that's possible. Moderator, can you see from the back end if our people can send in answers? Is that possible?
Yes, yes, that is possible. I would like
Okay, I
to
think
also
I'll just wait for. Okay, yes, please. You can be my audience. Who do you think has a stake in prison
I
reform?
think I think I have a stake as just as a citizen of my own country. Uh, you know
Yes,
that saying of it could be me tomorrow. So if there's a better prison
exactly.
system, then I should definitely
Exactly.
back in. And of course, the whole essence of having a just society and a practical one, for that matter, is the business of everybody. So I actually think coming together to have these conversations is important because of the fact that it affects all of us. What I think is more important is that the people who now come together to start the conversation have to be very innovative towards the approach because of the sensitivity of the matter. No one wants to think they'll ever go to prison, or rather, no one will ever think of wanting to be in any issue to do with the law. But then again, the law falls on everybody. So I think the
Yeah.
innovation around that is the key aspect towards making these collaborative efforts successful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Victoria. But yes, you are right. We all have a stake, you know, in I can also see one comment that says citizens have a stake in prison reform, which is true. And I try to list as this is I try to list. So we have the government, we have the judiciary, we have civil society, human rights organizations, criminal justice professionals, young people, old people, businesses, justice impacted families. Because again, if I should have a family member behind bars or in prison, I definitely have a stake, because if the prison is not reformed in a way that can first of all rehabilitate this person or reform them, even if they committed the crime, then it feels like they are just going away for a couple of years, but then they come back and they are probably worse than they went through that system. And like I think I don't know if it was Audrey or Tracy that mentioned during her presentation of how, as much as there might be civil offenses committed. When you commit a crime, the first person that is being wronged is the state, because per our laws, there are certain ways you should behave as a citizen. So if you commit a crime, that's the first person you're offending. But then if I do not have a country that has provided a prison that reforms me as it should, then I definitely have a stake in it, and I definitely have to mobilize to speak up or to, work for change. So basically, everybody has a stake in prison reform. So this definition, pardon I think in the turning into a PDF and presenting that's it. But basically, according to the Nelson Mandela rules, this is one of the most famous rules for how prisons, the ideal of prisons should be across Africa and across the world too. Other countries to have adopted it, but it says the purpose of a sentence of imprisonment or similar measures deprivative of a person's liberty are primarily to protect society against crime and to reduce recidivism. Those purposes can be achieved only if the period of imprisonment is used to ensure, so far as possible, the reintegration of such persons into society upon release so that they can lead a law abiding and self supporting life. So, basically, to say what I just said, if our prisons are not rehabilitative, if they do not consider changing the values of the person committing the crime or who didn't commit the crime, that period that they'll be behind bars, if they do not seek to rehabilitate them, then something is wrong and change needs to happen. So, how has Nigerian's justice sectors mobilized to collaborate? We're already doing that in many ways, but I would say one of the major ways we do that is through the Administrative and Criminal Justice Monitoring Committee. So, just a brief, you can feel free to check afterwards, please. But just a brief, the ACJMC is one of the main organizations and committee that was set up to implement a major legislation that is good in that we have for speedy trials and essentially administration of criminal justice here in Nigeria. So this committee, their mission is to basically implement this legislation, that's the ACJA, and strengthen compliance with the criminal justice provisions, they are to enhance access to justice, reduce court backlogs, and alleviate overcrowding in our prison. So basically, this committee they work with other stakeholders, so from the police to NGOs to the judiciary to other enforcement agencies to ensure that criminal justice provisions are being strengthened and implemented. There are several ways they do this, but I would say so far, especially where I stay, that's Abuja, that's the capital territory, they have been very instrumental in mobilizing stakeholders to enhance our criminal justice system. And the next slide, you see some of the ways they already do that. So other communities that are already mobilizing, we have the NBA, that's the Nigerian Bar Association. Every lawyer, once being called to bar in Nigeria, becomes a member of the NBA, no matter their states, no matter where they are in Nigeria, they are part of the NBA and they have access to be mobilized to reform prisons. So through the running of various programs aimed at either decongesting prisons or rehabilitating prisoners, you see various NBA branches working together as a community for prison reform. The next organization we have the FIDA, that's the International Federation of Female Lawyers. We have the Legal Aid Council. We have the National Human Rights Commission. We have enforcement agencies because per different kinds of crimes, you have different methods that would go into them. So you have NAPTIP, which covers for trafficking of persons. You have EFCC, which has to do with commercial crimes, economic crimes. Sorry, you have the NDLA, who has to do with drugs and various other enforcement agencies. You have, of course, the correctional centers because if you do not work with them, they are in my organization who behind bars, they are a major stakeholder in the work we do because we work with people behind bars, ensuring dignity for the incarcerated and seeking to provide access to justice for them. So, working with correctional centers are one of the major things we do to move us forward. So, civil societies as well, non-profits. I've listed some that we have working very well here in Nigeria. We have the program that has to do with um, prison rehabilitation and their welfare for prisoners. You have Hope Behind Bars, my organization. You have Amnesty International, PPDC, Citizen Gavel. All these organizations work and collaborate with other communities to enhance criminal justice here in Nigeria. So those are some of the ways we are already mobilizing. We can't also forget international and regional partners and donors because if you work in the criminal space, you know it's a sort of a thankless job where, first of all, from the government, they're telling you, oh, we don't have enough money that is assigned to criminal justice. It's also like there's a question that was asked, how about private owned prisons? We don't have something like that here in Nigeria, so we definitely have to depend on what the government has provided and then working through either applying for funding. The Legal Aid Council, like Audrey also mentioned, in Kenya is lacking that general fund. We also have that issue here in Nigeria where the Legal Aid Council doesn't have a centralized funding to enhance what they do. So basically, the legal aid is also incapacitated in terms of providing solutions because they do not have adequate funding themselves. So we can't take out international partners and donors and also regional partners and donors because they have been very instrumental in in mobilizing communities. You have situations where two NGOs can apply for a fund to do something to enhance criminal justice in Nigeria, and then the donors help in. So we have some donors like UNODC, ROLAC, MacArthur Foundation, the UN, etc. Then, so ways these organizations are listed in the last two slides reform prisons in Nigeria. So through routine decongestion exercises. So even recently, I joined in for the past 2 weeks. I've been with the Chief Judge of the FCT and other stakeholders to decongest prisons. So what happens in these exercises is that inmates who have been behind bars either have not been going to court as much rather, or they've been there for some kind of offenses. They are being brought, basically their matter is being tabled before the judiciary, and then if it's probably fines they need, we go along with NGOs. And so if there are NGOs who are interested in paying for fines to get these people out, we have that happen. So these regular reviews and exercises helps to release eligible inmates and provide access to justice for them. So sometimes even us as an organization who behind bars, one of the major ways we provide access to justice and reform prisons is by going into these prisons and asking specifically for indigent inmates who do not have lawyers, and representing them and their case pro bono. We've been able, from last year, we're able to get over 2,000 across the state out of prison, because this is one of the ways our prisons are overcrowded, and until we decongest them by ensuring that people who are behind bars are either maybe for petty offences or for are considered and provided legal representation. Another way is through accountability checks on detention facilities. So through the monitoring through monitoring visits and inspections to ensure that right-based practices are happening, we're able to reform our prisons, because when you sort of carry out exercises that show the correctional centers that, oh, eyes are on you. You can't violate the rights of people behind bars. You have to respect their rights. If they do not have lawyers, why are they not going to court? Why don't they have lawyers assigned to them? So with that accountability check, they are being forced to, you know, do things like that. And these are some of the snapshots of the ways we've collaborated with stakeholders. So here you have us working with the prisons, the judiciary, other NGOs, and other people in the justice space. This is us performing an accountability check where we went with the judiciary to a police station to figure out how many people do they have still detained over a period of time. Have they been taken to court within 48 hours? Things like that, ensuring that our laws are being complied. Here we also, you know, carried out a routine accountability check as well, and also provided. And here, this was our organization partnering with other lawyers to represent protesters who were arrested under the End Bad Governance protest in last year August, to ensure that, because many of these people arrested did not have access to legal representation. So as civil societies, we observed their proceedings to ensure that no human rights violation was happening, and it also led to the release of a lot of them, especially the minors who were arrested and kept. Um, One of the major prison reforms aims to address issues such as overcrowding, like I've said, inadequate funding, and harsh conditions. But one of the major things that prison reform has to do is promote rehabilitation and reintegration. So, like I already mentioned, if people are going through, and from our speakers have highlighted, a lot of people who go through the system, you might think, oh, they committed the crime, let them serve the time. We have as at March, we had 67% of people behind bars awaiting trial. So that is, their cases have not even been dealt with for you to know, oh, if they actually committed a crime. In the last the congestion exercise I went with, we saw the case of a young boy who was working, and then he took 3 cobs of corn from a nearby farm to roast, and because, yes, technically he stole, he was arrested. So things like that. People might say, oh, people behind bars are criminals, blah blah blah. So what happens within that time where they've stayed? You, first of all, you didn't consider non-custodial measures for them. You said, okay, they must go through the term. But if they are going through that term, what kind of rehabilitation is happening? And like Tracy rightly said during her presentation, Africa, Nigeria doesn't have a system yet that we can say, okay, those awaiting trial stay in this particular correctional center. Those who have been convicted for particular crime stay. Everybody's mixed up. It's overcrowded. These people have access to people who have committed crimes, and they get the intel. They are being, for lack of a better word, initiated into, and someone who might have gone there through there, not committing any crime or a petty crime, would have access to some form of knowledge that they shouldn't have in the first place. So rehabilitation is very important. And one of the major ways you can do this is through skill acquisition programs within the facilities. Or behind bars through our Inside Out program already does that, where we provide skill hubs in correctional facilities and teach inmates some skills to help them when they come out. We also have educational opportunities for inmates. So last year we were able to raise funds through the donation of people learning behind bars for inmates who were eligible to write WAEC, that's the West African, yes, examination. So after you go through secondary school, you write the WAEC and you are able to gain access into the university. So some of these inmates who were eligible, we raise funds for them to be able to write. These things like this give them hope because again, if you say a lot of inmates who go through, research will show you that a lot of inmates who go through the system are poor, they lack basic education. If you are not making anything to ensure that even after they come out, their life is somewhat better, then you're just punishing, and that is not good enough. So those are some of the ways we are promoting rehabilitation and integration. Of course, psycho psychosocial support for the inmates, because we also need to check their mental state of being. I mean, taking away someone's liberty is such a big deal. Look at how a lot of us were losing our minds in 2020 because we're not able to go out. So imagine someone confined, their liberty taken. There's also a certain way they are treated. If you don't provide support for them, if you don't provide counseling for them, then you are making them not well. So also restorative justice initiatives to also repair harm and build accountability. These are some of the ways we promote rehabilitation. Reintegration as well, because after rehabilitation comes reintegration. So after then, we have post-release support, that's housing, job placement, mentorship. We also have sensitization of the community in order to reduce stigma of ex-offenders. Yes, someone might commit a crime, but if they've gone through the time, people are not always um, they're not always their crime, they're not always what they committed. They should be given second chances. Then collaboration with CSOs as well for transitional programs and second chances, policy advocacy for non-custodial sentencing. Not every crime or offense needs to be like the punishment doesn't have to be people going behind bars. So those are some of the ways we promote rehabilitation and integration. So I think the major question is also how can you, as a participant, as a stakeholder, how can you mobilize stakeholders for reform? Again, I'm really sorry. I think my slide, I promise, I worked hard on it. It looks better than this. But yes, so some of the ways you can is by having having a mindset of wanting to contribute to the building. It's very important that as stakeholders, we we take this personally because like you rightly said, Victoria, this can happen to anyone. It can happen to you, it can happen to your family member. You can just be at the wrong side of the law and they are thrown. And sometimes you're not even you didn't even do anything wrong. There's something we say here in Nigeria. I mean, Nigeria never happened to you because sometimes our system is flawed in a way, especially our criminal justice system. It's flawed in a way that anything can happen. You can find yourself behind bars tomorrow. Even me talking from a privileged point of helping people behind bars, I can end up there tomorrow. And so if I have created and if I've contributed to creating a prison that considers the dignity of my person, considers my rights, considers protecting me, then maybe I'll be a bit more comfortable than I would be if I'm sent to prison right now because I know that it's nowhere to be. Each beneficiary we talk with, they always tell you prison is not somewhere you want to be. They don't like their experience there. They never want to go back there. So if all stakeholders have an idea and have a mindset of wanting to contribute, of wanting to use their passion to drive them to changing things. So be curious. Because I'm assuming a lot of us on this call are young professionals who want to change the criminal justice system. So I think curiosity will be a very good and big thing. Ask questions. Why are things the way they are? Why is the justice system favorable more to the rich than the poor? Why does it feel like it's mainly the poor people that are behind bars? Why are our prisons overcrowded? What can we do? Curiosity will help you in creating solutions. Join a group. You might think, oh, I'm not working in a law firm or an NGO, but you can join a group, you can volunteer, you know. Every we have a solution whereby even online there are certain networks of people that are already advocating for prison reform. You can join that group, you can volunteer your skills, volunteer your services, align with organizations that align with your values and do the work, show up and help. Leverage your network and who do you know, who can you speak to, how can you join your resources together, because remember mobilization is just coming together with like minds and working towards achieving the same goal. This is what this entire presentation is about. It's just showing you that you can start where you are, you can leverage your network, you can be curious, you can use your platform in order to contribute to the building of creating a prison system where all of us can be proud of. You know, in your country, in Africa, we can be proud of, but we need to all contribute. So I think that's my last slide, and I hope you took something. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dorcas. Wow, that was really a good presentation. A lot, a lot to sink in. And I mean, it just concluded the conversation in such a beautiful manner. I will want to see whether we have any questions from the audience. Uh, Thank you so much for everyone who has kept with us all this long. I personally, I'm awed by the conclusion, and I would like to say that this is definitely an important conversation. And as someone who is very passionate, who is very curious about access to justice, I've actually seen that there is more access to, like, there is more. It's actually a reality to work towards having a better justice prison. As I had mentioned earlier, I run an organization where we're building tech tools for access to justice. So, like, currently we're working on a platform called Unheard, which is essentially a matching system where people can come in and write their cases and get matched directly to lawyers. Now, one of the questions that we've been asking ourselves is, how do we access these institutions that have the inmates who need the lawyers, or like Audrey had previously mentioned that, you see, at the police station, you might need a lawyer who can be able to negotiate on your behalf. How do you access these people? And just by being uh, on this platform, I've learned that there's more access than I thought was, and there's partnerships that we can have with organizations that can help us facilitate, access to justice to now the inmates, and build a better prison system. Personally, I am a true believer that anyone who is represented is better off in this criminal justice system, whether it's in Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya. And we do hope that our platform cuts across, the countries. And this was honestly really insightful. Thank you very much, Dorcas, for your presentation. And let's continue
Yeah,
with
thank
the
you, Victoria. I just wanted to speak to that. Yes, first of all, very amazing work you're doing. You know, the idea of leveraging tech for legal solutions. I think the legal space it has been one of the it's one of the sectors that I don't know, because I don't know,
I
maybe because
know.
they tell you how lawyers are sober, they tell you how, and it's true, law is a
Yeah,
very um conservative profession. But if we
true.
do not take improvements like tech,
Yeah,
it's really going to be it
it's
makes our
expensive.
work easier. So one of the
Yeah.
major things that my job do as a program associate with Hope Behind Bars is working with pro bono lawyers. So obviously we can't represent every single person, but
Single
if we
person. Yeah.
can work with pro bono lawyers and connect them, so when we go to these prison visits and
Mm-hmm.
we get their cases, we connect with lawyers around the country, because we
Mm-hmm.
we have we have a branch here in Abuja and Edo State, but we definitely know that, I mean, crime or the justice system is
Everywhere.
it's everywhere. So with working
Mm,
with pro bono lawyers, we're able to connect
mm,
those lawyers to people who need them. We definitely need technology. We can't
yeah,
always go to those places. So I think your organization is already doing something very amazing. I think what I can advise is keep knocking on those doors, keep reaching out to those stakeholders, showing them that look, we're here to help you. And needs assessment is also very great. I think it was one of the things I mentioned, or if it was listed. It's also, you might have an idea of, okay, this is how this should help you. But if you go to the correctional centers, or if you go to court, you speak to this
mm,
inmate, and you ask the stakeholders, okay, this is what we have, but how can we help you? What do you need? I think it would be better to, in a way,
mm,
connecting them, because many times they've gotten a lot of solutions, a lot of organizations telling them, okay, this is what you need, take it, but and then they never use it. But if you tell them that, okay, we're ready to, and you know how Africans, older people were very adverse to technology. But if you show them that I am going to be with you throughout this
yeah,
process, maybe
yeah,
to make it a bit easier for them to, and I think every stakeholder here that has spoken is open to, I'm open to, you can reach out to me if you need to
yeah,
collaborate or work on something together. It can be for your country or here in Nigeria. That would be fine. But that's how we mobilize, by keep continuing to knock on those doors until they are open
sure.
to us.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. That's definitely like a good thing. Actually, now I'm seeing we've come to a full circle moment with the discussions we had with Chiamaka when we were starting to organize this webinar on, how like we can make this system work and who we need to talk to and everything. And definitely all the points that you brought up. I've definitely considered them. I've been working on this for quite a while, and trust is a very big issue when it comes to actually delivering justice solutions. And one of the ways we are even doing that is by approaching this from a totally different way and looking at things, even our platform, designing it towards connection instead of, a click of a button, looking at the temperament of the person who's coming into the platform. This person is panicking, probably they're not in a good state of mind. So how can we create a trustworthy environment, even digitally, for them to actually take the leap of faith and actually start the journey? Because at the end of the day, it's them we are building for at the end of the day. And what now has even made it better is that if you can even work with through organizations like yours, who behind bars, that has already been trusted, and now you can train the inmates on how to use the platform, it can even build up a better layer of trust and now help that access to justice become even more of a reality. And definitely, I am very, very, very keen on getting into the Nigerian market, because I know this is a bigger problem there. I was there and I talked to a few people, and yeah, it's a reality that cuts across. And I usually say Nigeria is like the Kenyan big brother, because our systems are somewhat similar. So government, colonial times and everything. So I do think that the solution can cut across. And of course, very looking forward to, collaborating and knocking on those doors as hard as we can, so that we can have a better prison system. And without much further.
So I think Chamaka left a question. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, she
Um.
said, what as
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. What are some of the loopholes in our legal system in Nigeria stakeholders can work on? I think you
okay,
can.
I think, yeah. I don't know if you want to, okay, for she said Nigeria, so I think I can speak to that. I think one major one I would say, hi Victor, are you there?
Dorcas, you can go ahead when her internet connects back.
Oh, okay. So I think one major loophole I would say is that in terms of, so one of the major things is that according to the Nigerian Correctional Acts, we have, I'll go back to reformation and rehabilitation. It says that it should be like, basically it should be have rehabilitation programs, but you find that not happening as much in correctional facilities. So I think NGOs can and stakeholders can key into that, because I like emphasizing that if majority of people behind bars are people awaiting trial, so that means within the time that they are going to be within that behind bars, they might go through trial, and then it's dealt with and they leave. But within that time, they've spent a lot of time there. So what happens? It feels like their life was just paused for that moment. So rehabilitation needs to happen. They need to understand that, okay, while you are here for a while your case is going through trial for whatever reason, there's still rehabilitation happening. They are not, while we are still dealing with the fact that our prisons are overcrowded and they are mixed up with people with crime, if serious rehabilitation is going on, they are able to learn new skills. And especially given the fact that a lot of people who are behind bars are poor people, people without education. But if rehabilitation programs are happening while they are there, they have an opportunity to have a different outlook to life. They are able to learn new skills so that when they come out, they can contribute positively to society, even while they are in there. Because through our rehabilitation program, the Inside Out program, we have some of the women behind bars already making materials that are being sold outside bar, like outside the prison, and a percentage of the money goes to them. So they're already earning an income while they are there. Those people who are, going through the school process, if we don't have systems like that where their education can be continued while they're behind bars, so they just pause for, they say, 2, 3, 5, 10 years while they're waiting for trial. I mean, just this Wednesday, last week Wednesday, I saw a young man who was actually granted pardon by, not a young man, old man, who was granted pardon for this by the CJ, but he had spent 11 years in prison, you know, going through trial for was it homicide? Yes, but his case has been coming up. So that kind of thing. If within 11 years, no skill, he had gained no skill, there's a very likelihood that he will come out. There's nothing to do. I mean, the world as he knows it has changed, and then in trying to fit in, he might get into trouble again, and then he's being thrown back. All that to say that reformation is one of the ways that they can stakeholders can go on. And then a loophole I would say is that while our laws say that non-custodial push and our law pushes for non-custodial sentencing, saying that not all offences should be punishable by imprisonment, it feels like there is no body to enforce this. So you have situations whereby a judge can sentence someone to a non-custodial sentence of community service. They can say, oh, sweep the market area for 2 months or 3 months, but there's nobody that ensures that every morning you show up on time to sweep, to clean. There's so everybody, it feels like, okay, because there's nobody to enforce this, the judge is forced to give imprisonment. So I think that's like a loophole that stakeholders can look into. Another thing that stakeholders can look into is also um, ensuring that right from the entry into the criminal justice system, that legal representation is provided. The law provides in Nigeria that within 48 hours you should be taken to court. But then there are certain things that the police will tell you, oh, they need to investigate or things like that. But if, I mean, we already have that. NGOs have sort of provided the PDSS, that's the duty solicitor scheme, where a lawyer is assigned to every I think our laws also provide for that. A lawyer is assigned to every police station, but that's not fully implemented. So I think it's something that I think PPDC is trying to do that in some police stations, but it's not fully, because you can't really blame them. there's lack of manpower, there's also lack of funding. So I think that's something that stakeholders can look into. I think those are some of the things that come to mind about loopholes that stakeholders can key into and work towards in reforming the prison system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you, Dorcas. I know we've extended our time beyond what we planned, so I just want to do a quick recap and then run down, and then we can just run up for the day. So thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you to our partners. Thank you to UPAD, Basic Rights, and then APAT. Thank you so much to everybody. I hope that we've been motivated to take action wherever we are. You can share this webinar on your social media, use Voices Unheard, Prison Reform hashtags, your social media. Tell us ways that you want to implement change, ways that this webinar has helped you understand the different issues and how you want to implement change. And then some people also affected by prison that sometimes don't always think about is the families of people in prison. Sometimes you have the head of a household is in prison, the income of that household has been cut off and other things. And I think it's something that we should look at. What about the family of these people in prison? What are the impacts on these people? And I'm glad for us, from Tracy took us through the problems, the issues, and she humanized them, the criminals without the crime, that they are still human despite their crime, and they are people like us, that despite whatever led them to that situation, they're still human beings. We had Audrey telling us about the development in Kenya, how Kenya is looking at different vulnerable groups, the intersex people, the lactating mothers, people who have little children. Every child has a right to their parents. It's an international right that every child has to have access to their parents. So see that Kenya is providing opportunity for parents and children to be together. The mothers, where the children are little, we see them disability, we see the mental support that is being done in Kenya, and see a lot of things that we can implement in our different countries. Dorcas has taken us back to and taken us to Nigeria to see how we as stakeholders, looking at churches, mosques, our cultures, our communities, everybody. I think every community, most times they have their own local government, they have their own community little groups here and there, and how we we don't need to be a CSO, an NGO to implement change. We can do it as our churches, our mosques, our community group, our town group, and other things. So thank you so much. Please don't forget to follow our partners, APATs. You can follow them on social media. They're on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Basic Rights Watch, and UPAD. Thank you so much for all your support. Thank you for coming here, listening to us, and please share your social media handles and tell us what you've learned and the ways that you can contribute to bringing about prison reforms in your community. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this very beautiful discussion. And let's walk the talk. Thank you so much once again, Chiamaka, for convening this, Dorcas, Tracy, and Audrey for giving us very beautiful presentations that gave us like an actual reality of our prison systems and what we can do to make them better. I am so humbled and honored to have facilitated this conversation. I was your moderator, Victoria Kangebe. Once again, thank you so much, and wishing you guys a lovely evening ahead.
Bye.
Good evening too.
Bye-bye.